I'm going to be launching a space station into orbit. The space station is a single entity. As soon as it loads here. I built this one as a conceptual space station, classic design with the dual ring. Um, I have not completely calculated the capacity to it, but I believe it is approximately 350 Kerbal capacity. And here it is. It has a center hub, has four large 2.5 meter or 1.25 meter tanks, the 800s. Those are to fuel the Werner RCS rockets that I use to maneuver and adjust it. Around this hub, it has two rings made up of the Mark I crew cabin, 2 capacity each. The hub points are the hitchhiker canisters, capacity of 4 apiece. I have calculated the center shafts at 66 capacity per total for all 4 of those put together. The outside rings have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Times 4 would be 48, and the inside ring has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times 4 would be 20, so that would be 68 times 2 would be 136. Plus the 66 would be 100, 200, 202. Okay, so make that 202 Kerbal capacity. And that capacity also includes the cupolas at the end. So 202. Still a sizable station. To get the station into orbit, I'm going to be using 8 Mammoth rockets built into a small asparagus system combined with a pair of 4 twin bores. The 4 in my testing, the 8 had plenty of power to put it into space, put it into orbit, but ran just short of the fuel, so I added the additional sides for fuel. Alright, let's launch this thing and see what we have. Normally, one thing here. Clear down to the bottom. Oop, there he is. There's Jebediah. I'm going to put a different pilot in there. Alright, so let's go to launch. Normally I would do this manually and get to space without using mods, but I'm kind of pressed for time, want to get this out, and so I am using MechJub. I'm using a path that I tested. The first thing that you need to do with this design I made this cupola the primary because when it's in space, it's going to be using that one as the primary, as its control. That will be up. But for the launch, I need to adjust the orientation so that it is going up. So I have the remote guidance unit down in the center that I'm using to launch. All right. When I'm doing this launch, I'm using the ascent guidance. I am limiting the Q to 20,000 pascals, so that the maximum pressure is going to be 20,000 pascals. Basically, due to the design of it, I'm keeping it down. I discovered that I do not need to limit to terminal velocity. This limiting to 20,000 pascal will do that. Flight path is going to be slightly off from this. It's actually going to go up a little bit higher than that. I'll get a slight burn at a certain point, and but we're going to make our initial gravity turn at about 15,000. And let's do this. Eventually it'll put them back to 100%. Also on this design, at the 4 outside points, I have ion engines pointing in both directions so that I can side. So far, the launch is progressing normally. Alright, we're about to start a gravity turn. And here it goes. Because of the flat tops and using the solar panels unprotected there, having the flat surfaces on the side, I have set the limited the pressure so it doesn't break it apart. We should get into a slight burn around 30,000 meters. It should taper off by the time we hit about 35 or 40,000. A couple of notes about using neck jab. One of the things I've done is I've turned corrective steering off because of the large nature of the rocket. Here we're getting into a burn, slight burn. Neck jab actually works a little bit better with large rocket systems without the corrective steering. When you get into the regular size stuff, corrective steering is helpful. Limiting Q to 20,000 PA is just limiting the amount of atmospheric pressure you can put on it while it's flying through the atmosphere. Alright, about to separate the other one. This one's a little nerve-wracking. I actually added some girders for structure here because when it was separating it was clipping the engines on one side or the other and breaking off engines. But when I added those, I gave it enough buffer that it did not continue to destroy one of my engines on separation. Alright, we should be coming out of the burn fairly soon. You see, it's just a small one, nothing really heated up. Just enough to make noise. I'm going to turn the auto-deploy solar panels off because it does make adjustments after they're up there. And I've rigged the key to deploying the solar panels. At this point, you can see that the apoapsis is extended beyond 100,000. This ring is at 100,000. That's my refueling station. As soon as it pushes that up to 150,000, it should cut out the engines. coast to the apoapsis where it'll adjust to a circular burn or circular orbit. Originally in the design, I had figured to, once in orbit, detach the rockets that took it there. At this point, I'm considering keeping those rockets and possibly moving it to another planet. Alright, we're starting to cut down. If we see our apoapsis is at 148 and closing into 150. We're at 53,000, so we've got very little air resistance left. It'll probably give one slight tap to put it back to 150,000, and we should be able to coast the rest of the way from there. As you can see, we're in space right now. We do not have much of a burn necessary to bring us back or bring us into a circular orbit. You can see here that it's still highly elliptical and is not actually in orbit yet. Since I can do multiple ones of these, I'm going to go ahead and separate the engines once we're in orbit, just to show the station as originally designed. Alright, we're just about to 150,000 and it's going to start circularizing the orbit. It's going to take a delta V of 809. You see here that our delta V is at 1700, so it's going to take about half of our remaining fuel to make the orbit circular. approximately a circular orbit. We've got a periapsis of 146,000, apoapsis of 150,000. Normally, I'd let it go ahead and finish adjusting it to a fairly perfect circular orbit, uh, but for today's purposes, I'm going to disengage the autopilot, put away our tools, and there's our space station. I'm going to go ahead and separate. Actually, I'm going to do this first. A little bit of a spin. Oops, I forgot to change my control from here. I'm going to find Kerbal. Should be in that direction. There we go. I'm going to face the station X so that the top is facing our power source. Once it's in position, I'll use the warp feature to freeze me in place. And we'll start our gravity rotation. Which we can see better if I... Oops. Change the camera to auto. And I'm going to go ahead and detach those last fuel. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to kind of cheat a little bit so that I'm going to stop the rotation. I got them pointed, I want to stop it while I'm pointed down. Really designed this for a lot of monopropellant. Yeah, I do not have much monopropellant on this thing. Most of my maneuvering was designed around using the SAS. And my fuel for the monopropellant is the liquid oxygen. Alright, good enough here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give them a slight burn and then release them. Actually, I'm going to save first just in case that doesn't work. Slight burn. Alright, is it moving? Yes. Now they should continue on because they were thrusting and shoot themselves straight into the atmosphere and burn up going into the ocean. Now let's see how badly I changed my orbit. I'm still 148 to 151. Close enough. And I'm going to go back to doing my rotation. Extend my solar panels. And turn on my lights. I've color-coded the different sections so I can always tell which direction I'm coming at it from. And there we have a space station, complete with rotation for artificial gravity. The last feature that I want to talk about here is the propulsion for modifying the altitude and angle of our of the orbit. I used ion engines. I used 4 in either direction. I bound those to different keys. So if I push one, I can move in one direction. Push the other, I can move in the other direction. And I love these ion engines. There you have it. An all-in-one Kerbal space station. Capacity 202 Kerbals.